Hey there, and welcome to making Spacehulk tiles. Not strictly speaking Spacehulk, you could use these for any game, including Infinity and D&D, and they don't have to have the Spacehulk-esque mesh floors. They could have anything on the floor, so you could do stone tiles one side for your dungeons and grass on the other side for outdoors or deserts or what have you. And over the course of this, I'm going to be doing a mixture of different background sceneries. So I'm going to end up with, I think, 3 sets. Definitely 2 sets to begin with. Going to deal with grass / woodland, i.e. greenery kind of backgrounds, and then deal with desert backgrounds. But first up, the actual tiles themselves. So you end up with something like this, so you can flip it, This, I'm going to just show you how this mesh stuff happens. So what I have is 1 times pre-made bit of mesh tile. Now I haven't done any of the 2 spot squares yet, so I thought because I need to do some of these anyway, that I would show you what I'm doing. The other thing I have is I have a whole load of plastic card cut into 3mm strips. Now on 45mm, ideally, really, you should maybe cut to 2.5mm, but previously had been cut to 3mm, more for me. So 40mm bases don't quite fit in the squares, which again, more for me. Again, now maybe if you're building something from scratch, you might like to do a 2-inch square, and you'll find that a lot easier because everything will fit in very easily. Alternatively, go for an inch square, but again, if you go for inch squares, I mean, you could do that, but you'll find that it's perhaps a bit awkward. Although if you are going to do inch squares, there are other ways of doing it than the way I'm going to do it. But first up then, you need to be cut down. Always start with the long sides. If you're going to do inch squares, also do the long middle strip. And then on your inch squares, you're going to cut the bits for either side of the middle strip. Now this is a fitting job because nothing's perfect unless you are the best measurer and cutterer ever. So I'm going to cut down the 2 pieces that go on either side, and then I'm going to need, because it's 2 squares, 3 pieces that run this way, and I will make sure that each piece fits as I'm cutting, or I'll cut it as close to fitting. So I'll be taking measurements off the actual object rather than measuring it up and cutting it and then hoping it fits. So I'll get back to you in a second with that done. Here are my first 2 pieces cut then, and I've actually just cut one and then the other, and you might notice that at this point they're a bit warped, they're not quite straight, so just flex them both sideways and front and back, just trying to get them to sit flush as possible, and you should find, as long as they lay roughly flat, you can get them, and you can get them flush to the edges. Should be fine. So then next up, lay super glue directly over the top of this, and don't be too generous, but on the same note, don't be not generous enough. You want to use a reasonable amount because it disappears in between the mesh basically, and you need to have enough on to actually have contact, preferably between the porous surface of the foam board and the mesh and the bits of plastic card you're using for making your grill or grid, I don't know, whatever it is, your frame I suppose for your grill. And that way you get a fairly solid bond, otherwise you're just dependent on the mesh to plastic card bond, and it can be a bit hit and miss. So I'm just going to stick these down, I'll be back in a second when I'm done. So having fitted either side runner, I'm going to call them runners, next up is starting to make the in-betweeny bits, which run from one side to the other. So in order to do this, you need to, again, it's a fitting job, so you're going to put them in place, mark where it is, so I'm just going to use a blade here, and then cut. And your aim is to get as accurate as possible to the fit for that particular part of the run. And you'll probably find that it's not exact, but that's fine because later on we'll do a fill job. Also, you might find that you have different sort of like ridges, rims running around them. So tend to try and fit it rim side down. Just find the neatest fit. It doesn't have to be perfect because later on we'll come back and fill all the gaps with green stuff. So we're going to crack on with getting all these bits fitted. So here we have the plastic frame put in place so we get a grid, but as you can see sometimes they are not perfect. You can cut every one so that they are perfect, something like this, where everything's fitted and it's pretty much just right. There's very little correction that needs to be done and it's pretty much ready to be painted, but we'll still go over it with a bit of green stuff. But that will be next time, and we'll also go over just how to go about filling and like techniques of making sure that it's all even, and you don't want to get the green stuff so that it spreads out into the mesh, because not going to be painting the mesh, just going to leave the mesh as it is, the black background with the mesh over the top. For me, works fine. Also, it's to do with the material not warping. So I hope it's been some interest use to you, and that if you're making anything like this, it's coming out really well. Do remember you can also leave transparency, so if you've got like a grid, you could always get 2 layers of grid, sandwich the mesh in between, and then you'd have see-through mesh, which could look nicer. Have thought a lot about putting pipe work underneath the mesh, doing all kinds of stuff with mesh actually. Mesh is kind of fun. But for now, that is our grid. Basically ready for action. Hell, even play on it like this if you wanted to. So thank you for watching, have a good one and take care. Bye bye.